right, this will be exciting considering all the internationalism going on between us over here. Welcome, Mindy, to the Leaders Who Care series.
No, great to be here with you.
I think, in LA we say leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. I just have a strange feeling there's probably going to be a lot more, but sequels are good, hopefully, if they're done properly. But no, it's great to have you here and sharing a lot of your amazing experiences. And always the best place to start is if you can tell us a little bit about you. We'll get to the other stuff in a bit, but this is because when I ask that, men are the worst. I say not the business stuff, personal, and then the first thing they say is, "Well, I'm the CEO of whatever." So tell us about you, where you're from originally, where you are now, family, your favorite color, something you never told anybody you want to share now to the world. Go for it.
Sure. So my journey to who I am today started when I was 3 days old, and I was adopted by my parents, who tried very long to have a child. And there's a whole story on how that happened for another time. But since the time I was born, I was told that I was given a gift. And so I've spent the last many decades focusing on what I could do to create impact, whether it be in business, whether it be in life, whether it be for others, whether it be for society. Grew up in Long Island, very serious student, but I also had fun, and finished high school in my junior year, went to college, was planning to get married and go to law school, was an English literature and philosophy major. And my last semester, senior year, I had an epiphany and changed my life, decided not to get married and not to go to law school, and moved to New York. And that's really where my true life journey began. Spent many years in the fashion industry with many designers, I'm sure we'll mention. And then ran companies for Nike, HSN, worked with Barry Diller, and then worked on the transformation of WW. And now I'm a partner in an advisory and investment firm, taking all of those years and working with other CEOs and companies to affect transformation. And transformation is probably how I would describe a lot of my life. I'm very fortunate. I have a great family. Have a husband for 36 years, have an incredible daughter, two small granddaughters. And in addition to what I've done from a work perspective, I've also been very involved in charitable endeavors, corporate endeavors. I've been in the board of the U.S. Fund for UNICEF for 11 years, was chairman of National Retail Federation. And at the end of the day, I have three words, I think, that define me: passion, purpose, and impact.
Those are three good words that we'll get to. And you're already starting to answer some of my questions, but that's not fair at all. But you gave me a good segue there when you talked about your daughter and your grandchildren. What were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you playing doctor or nurse? Were you organizing friends to play sports, doing lemonade stands or T-shirts? What were you like?
As I said, I was a fairly serious kid, one of those, I have something, to prove. But, I was very into fine arts and art. So I'd always be the one at the school working on all of the things for all of the events and what they had to do. Somehow, which is really makes no sense because I was living on Long Island and it was not a rural area. My mother put me in 4-H. So I did a lot with that for a number of years. I also loved sports. So, I played volleyball. I was also a cheerleader. So I would say I was also in a sorority. Actually, high schools had sororities. So I did that. But it was always, I wanted to try and experience new things. I wanted to be part of teams. I wanted to create value. Um, and, again, I ended up finishing school as a junior, which, of course, I don't regret anything. I grew up with Jewish parents whose favorite word was everything in life is beshert, which in Yiddish it means it was meant to be. So
Mm.
I never look backwards. I only look forwards. I don't regret. Um, and but I definitely accelerated things and probably didn't allow myself to enjoy other things at the time. But it all ended up okay.
Well, I'm a big hockey fan. When people would always ask Wayne Gretzky, when you were a kid, did your father push you into playing this and that, whatever, all this stuff? He said, no, I just did it because I loved it, and that's what I wanted to. I wanted to do, and I love what I do now, which is the broadcasting part of the sports and helping kids. I just loved it, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great path to take, and so I get where you're coming from in that respect. You talked about. I was glad to hear, by the way, you said you've been married for 30 years. I was hoping you didn't not just you decided not to be married forever, type of thing. And, but so you took the path of education, GW, Manhattanville College, which I don't know if everybody knows about, but that's a pretty cool school, actually. Um, Tell us about how that journey and your decisions on law going to New York um, evolved into going into the corporate retail world. Like you said, big names like Nike, Ralph Lauren, etc.
So when I literally had that what I believe was my transformational moment, that if I didn't take the risk and make those changes then, I don't know what my life would have been. And I tell people all the time, risk taking and boldness are the essence of transformation. But not taking a risk is often riskier than taking the risk and pivoting when you need to pivot. And that moment really formed a big aspect of my life and my career. So when I moved to New York, I made the decision that I wanted to focus on an area of business that had creativity integrated into it. And even though I might not be the creator, I love the idea of where you could be in a business that could make creativity successful. Not sure I knew exactly what that was at 20 years old, but and there were two areas of business I decided to look at to find a role. One was fashion, and the other was media, which at the time, was the magazine and content business. Um, but in those days, that was a rarefied atmosphere of who they would hire. It was like the society girls, and I definitely was not one of those. Um, and I ended up having an interview with the gentleman who was the president of international for a company called Manhattan Industries, which was a menswear portfolio and accessories portfolio of companies. And I had the interview, and it was to be his, executive assistant and to do a lot of different things. It's the end of the interview, and he said to me, "Well, do you take shorthand?" And I said, "No, but I take very fast longhand." And he immediately hired me. And that's why I always say to people, you're never going to have exactly everything, but you have to show where you're going to add value and be creative, et cetera. So um, I started working there. And what's interesting is I made the decision after a year that I was going to do something else, because I just knew that a woman was not going to get the type of roles that I would look to be pursuing in sales or business or merchandising, at the time. And I think, it surprised some people, but I ended up going to work for a young designer at the time, a young Black designer named Jeffrey Banks. And, it was an incredible experience. And Then, from there, worked for another designer named Ron Chereskin, menswear designer, who was kind of reimagining, you know, menswear in an era where all men wore khaki pants and white polo shirts.
Not to mention
And
the khaki
then
khaki shorts.
Jeffrey became the creative director of a company called Morona Sport, which redefined or actually defined what spectator active meant. Um, in the 80s, no one had done it. And he said, you need to come here with me. And I always say that's the power of relationships that are sustainable. And I went, and it was a rocket ship. And at 26, I was then promoted to go be the VP of sales for the Jeffrey Banks menswear division for menswear. And did that. It was very unusual for a woman to have that role in the menswear business. But it was interesting. And this goes back how you have to kind of advocate for yourself. I knew that the person I replaced in the role was making a lot more money than I was. And so I went to the CEO of the company, which owned a couple of different companies. And I said, look, I'm doing this work. I'm doing it well. I don't feel I'm being fairly compensated. And he said, well, you don't have as much experience. I said, well, I think you need to look at impact, not just experience. And when they didn't make the change, I decided that I was going to make a move. And I went to become the president of Willie Smith Menswear, who was an amazing designer, who really was the first designer to really believe that fashion came from the street up, not just couture down. He was also a Black designer, believed that fashion should be accessible way before Target coined that. First designer to do collaborations with artists such as Keith Haring, Barbara Kruger, etc. Amazing experience, and also reinforced my philosophy on diversity and accessible aspiration. And unfortunately, Willie was, one of the first, unfortunate circumstances with AIDS, and he passed away. And I ended up going to work for Tommy Hilfiger, who was disrupting the entire menswear business on his own at the time. Still a very, very close friend. I'd met my husband when I worked for Willie Smith. I had my daughter. About the same time, Tommy had his son, interestingly enough, and was really, the company was doing incredibly well. But I kept getting approached to go be the CEO of Chaps Ralph Lauren. It was a turnaround. And I kept saying, I'm with this hot Tommy company. Why am I doing this? And finally they said, would you please just go meet with Ralph? And I said, okay. And Ralph can be very convincing. And I said, you know what? There are no women CEOs of menswear companies. There are going to be very few opportunities. I have a vision for what this business could be, how I could turn it around. It was a licensee with a company called Warnaco, very controversial CEO, female. I said, I'm going to do it. And everybody thought I was a little crazy. You're going from. And in 3 years, we took the company from $25 million losing money to $250 million, doing extremely well. We created this whole new category of menswear called main floor collections. And then I was also given responsibility for the other menswear companies in the portfolio. But, and this is a really other critical point that's so important for me to make about values, about culture. The culture of the company was horrific. It was toxic. The CEO was leading that. And I felt that after, my 3-year contract was up, that if I stayed, I was being complicit, that I could not validate being in a company like this, because why would people respect that? I might be doing extremely well. I might actually be treated okay. I was doing extremely well financially, but I said, this is not right. And I literally went home that night and said to my husband, I'm resigning tomorrow. I don't have another job, but I know I'm doing the right thing. And that's what I did. And I remember her saying to me, you either have another job, you're independently wealthy, or you're stupid. I said, or D, none of the above. And
Absolutely.
I was escorted out by security that afternoon,
It's funny how that
standing on Park Avenue going, what did I just do? But I knew I did the right thing. And one day later, Ralph called me and said, look, we're devastated. Look what you did with the business. But if you're going to work anywhere, we want you to work for us. We will bring you in. We'll give you the responsibility for all new business development, and you'll work on that and hopefully go run one of those companies. And that's what happened. I worked on a number of different things, worked on the business plan for Polo Jeans Company, and ended up going to be CEO and starting up the business. So, it's just so important. I tell people all the time that when you look at a company and you look at a culture, you look at a leader, remember it is also a reflection on you.
100%. And there's so much in there that relates to why we trademark the term leaders who care and why we work only with leaders who care. We help leaders who want to amplify the impact they're making, et cetera, and how it impacts talent. You've actually gone into some of my other questions there, which is awesome. But I want to ask also, was there a thread through all these experiences then, positive, negative, whatnot, to being president of WW in terms of supporting health and fitness and women, etc.? And by the way, there's no reason why a woman shouldn't be in charge of a men's clothing company, because you tell us how to dress all the time anyway. So
I know. Well, the funny thing is, at one point, I wanted to go take over. I wanted to run a women's company, and everyone said to me, "Well, you don't have women's experience." I said, "Let me explain something to you. I've been running a menswear company. I'm a woman. I understand fashion, and there's no women running women's companies either." And so when I started Polo Jeans Company, it was really important that it be men and women. But to your point, um, after Polo Jeans Company got acquired by Jones New York, I knew I wasn't going to stay. And I was very fortunate. I got a call from Phil Knight. He'd just come back to Nike, and he was building a new executive team. And he really wanted, me to do a number of things. One, make Nike a real apparel company, not just a footwear company that made apparel. Really develop the women's apparel business as a true women's company. Really focus on innovation and differentiation, and really focus on diversity inside and out. And that experience there for me, both kind of rebuilding what the business could be with that vision, building the team, restructuring, changing their supply chain, but also starting their first women's leadership council and working on the business case for diversity and what we needed to do as an organization. That was another really critical point for me in that journey around understanding what was going to create business success. And then after 6 years at Nike, I was doing this insane commute between New York, Portland, Oregon. I was out of the country 30% of the time. I really needed to kind of make a change. And when I gave a lot of thought to what was going to be, what my next step could be, I said, well, I'm ready to be a CEO of a public company or a major company. I want a business that I can transform for growth. Mobility was going to be a huge factor. It really wasn't happening yet at the degree it was in other companies in the United States. People were consuming content differently. Brands were becoming distribution captive. what could this new way of engaging consumers be? So when I was introduced to Barry Diller and asked about running IAC Retail, which was a portfolio of companies, Home Shopping Network, a whole catalog portfolio, Frontgate, Ballard, Grandin Road, a German business, etc. Could I transform it and turn it around? I got really excited about this next generation of what the intersection of editorial program commerce could be, which right now is more relevant than any other time you see what's happening in the world of influencer video brand commerce.
Yep.
And so when I left Nike to go do that, people thought I was insane. You work for Nike, you go to a cocktail party, what do? Who you work for? You're kind of the cool kid. And then all of a sudden you're at a party and somebody whispers to you, I've shopped on Home Shopping. And I'm like, why are you whispering? Right. And I said, this is the opportunity for this brand to start leading culture and to start leading things. And I had the fortune to work for Barry Diller, he exemplifies risk-taking and boldness is the essence of transformation. And I had that support. And so I was able to relaunch Home Shopping Network as HSN. And then I went to join Barry in 2006. And then I took the company public in 2008, 2 weeks before the Lehman bankruptcy. But we were on fire. And, it was an incredible business. We built an incredible team totally around creativity, innovation, but really understanding the essence of what the consumer needed and how to speak with her, but also to create change. We launched HSN Cares, had huge impact with a lot of businesses. So I would say the theme goes back to what I originally said. Is this something that I am truly passionate about? Is it purposeful for this point in my career and for the business? And will it have impact? Will it have business impact? Will it have impact on kind of the employees? Will it have business impact on the partners? And will it have impact that we could drive and give back? And, I would say all of those things were critical. And that is what led me to the decision to join when Oprah came in as a partner at Weight Watchers, to join her to work on the transformation of this business that had been transforming lives for over 50 years. But how could we do so much more? And I had been speaking around the world as the chairman of the National Retail Federation on how the brands of the future have to marry technology plus meaning to help people live more connected lives. And I started doing a lot of kind of exploration within the health and wellness space and realized that societally we were at a really significant issue. And this was way before COVID, right? Not way before, but before, that all we were talking about is the growth of the wellness economy. And the world was getting unhealthier. Life expectancy was decreasing for the first time. Obesity was one of the number one causes of significant life expectancy and issues. And so it became, very important to me that how could you create financial and human impact at the same time? And it was incredible to be able to see the impact on people's lives. But, when COVID hit, obviously it had implications for the business, but it was more important than ever that we keep our community together and we have that support. And I'm a huge believer that the brands that are really performing right now and have had the power of creating community, whether you have a Nike or whether you have now a Fanatics, which been on the board of it for 6.5 years, or any other brand that's done that in a significant fashion. you want that emotional connection to the brand, and you want them to support one another, and you want to support them. And we worked really hard with WW Good, our formation of the Healthy Living Coalition, and everything we were trying to do around even changing laws around disparities in food access. And those things were so important. If you think about it, the number one cause of COVID related deaths was obesity.
Hmm.
We still have not solved all the problems, but there was a lot of work to say what's going to help people with all their aspects of health. And now that I'm part of an organization where I'm working with CEOs and I'm working with teams and I'm working with boards on how they have to affect either transformation or growth or impact in their business. One of the things that, everyone is taking into consideration is what is their business impact? What is their financial impact? And what is their societal and human impact?
Well, actually, I feel like Jay Leno with Robin Williams. This is awesome because Jay would say, "Hi, Robin," and then take it away from there. So you've done fantastic, and I don't even have to answer certain or ask certain questions, but you're right on with so many things. And we founded Fifth Element on the basis of, actually, we launched it on International Women's Day 5 years ago at the UN headquarters, but it was on the foundation that leaders and their businesses or organizations can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. And it has been proven over and over again. And in areas of, for example, healthcare and health equity, big needs there. And in participation, as you do, even on boards, we were just with UNICEF and Aspen, as a matter of fact, doing stuff for a whole food security initiative. Can you describe how your experience is? And to your point, way back, it wasn't about years of experience, it's about experiences and impact. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, rather than, well, you don't have experience in that. Well, you should still get paid equal. You're doing the job, plus, plus, plus. So how have your experiences created the foundation for founding Consello? And I'm going to quote you, I think, here, and how, when you mentor, motivate, and share knowledge with one another to provide equal opportunities to succeed, how does that translate into success all the way around, like you said, business, economic impact, social impact, etc.?
So, one of the things that I always say, and I've learned, you can have impact at every single stage of your life and your career.
Sure.
It's just putting yourself out there, using your voice, advocacy, allyship. Number one. Number two, what I also always say, that the reason I have been successful is I have focused on others' success. Because if they're successful, the business will be successful, and you ultimately will be successful. The third is, if you do have the opportunity to create a bigger and bigger platform that you're able to utilize, if you don't use it, what have you built it for? What has been that purpose?
Right.
And I think that, my work, whether it's, I've been in the field with UNICEF, I've experienced everything, I can come back and relay those experiences. I remember going to Senegal, I was in Africa, and I brought my daughter when she was 23. It changed her life,
Sure.
right? So, what can you do that's going to create change for other people? Because ultimately, you are going to benefit from that. And I think if you look at areas of diversity, Franz Johansson wrote a book many years ago called The Medici Effect, on how diversity drives innovation and business success.
Yeah.
It's more critical today than ever before. And it's a business imperative. It's not, a bullet point, right? And I think all of these things are so important as elements of leadership that we have to be thinking about at all times.
No, I agree 1,000,000%. And we look to show that impact and talent in harmony actually make do the best for a business being most successful. Diversity is not a, well, we check off this person, check off that person, check off this person, and it's way beyond just color. There's so many things in that diversity. Have you found, because we also find in working with our clients, in representing them as leaders who care, we're able to find the top talent, but the top talent can go wherever they want to go. And they look for certain factors that make them go, first of all, they want to make money and impact at the same time. They're not choosing one over the other.
Correct.
And, but to get a great team, did you find that executives understood that taking advantage of that relationship of impact and talent helps them attract, develop, but also keep the best talent and best team?
100%. It's a non-negotiable. And I think, as a leader, my job is to surround myself with people smarter than myself. I joke around. I said, look, I need to know enough about everything to ask the right questions and know what I am more of the expert in. But I need to surround myself with diversity of thought. And so think of the elements of diversity: age, race, gender, ethnicity, life stage, experience. You want that. And what I say is, when we're in a meeting, I want to encourage what I call productive discomfort. I want to have the different voices in the room. I want to have a bit of the, challenge intersection, because then when we all come out with the outcome, we've been aligned, we've heard all voices, and we open up the door and we're all saying the same message, and we've probably come out with a better solution. And I think, look what's happening in the world today. We need more of this.
No kidding. It's interesting. I had a Deloitte. I worked at Deloitte when I started out in Montreal and Toronto, and he said to me, we'll get into influencers, but he said to me, Mark, brilliance is simple. There might be a little bit of a complicated journey, but the actual answer is simple. If and he's saying if you do a lot of listening and whatnot, but his message was simply brilliant. Also, that people want to belong to something, and in fact, they say that people's hearts and souls are filled mostly by belonging. And if you create that, like you're talking about, that trust of other people being smart and using their capabilities and getting the experiences that they also want, then you can't help but not succeed, and not only economically, but making an impact. So, like I said before, we're going to have to keep them wanting more, and then as a result, do a sequel. But I want to ask you one last question on this part. A client told me in 2021, he said to me, Mark, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was like a really cool line when they said that, because time does fly, or zoom, I guess we should say right now. With everything that's happened, COVID and the last couple of years have been interesting for a lot of people. What are you most grateful for? And also, what are you most hopeful for?
So I would say, if you think of what we've all gone through in the last few years, I think we've all done a radical reappraisal of what we value, who we value, how we value our time, what we truly want in our lives. And I'm hoping, amidst all the chaos, that aspect moves us forward in a different way, and we're able to block out the distractions and realize what's really important.
Well said. Well, I'm grateful that you are a leader who cares, and I'm hopeful that you will keep caring, but you keep making an impact out there. So, and I'm looking forward to the sequel, because I think there's a lot more to talk about. So thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.